Hi, I'm Samuel Burke. Welcome to the CNN Philippines special. Hashtag WFH, work from home. This has become the new reality for millions of people around the world. This is my at-home space, and it's also my office, my living room. I've adapted by buying new equipment like this microphone, which has a USB plug, which goes into my laptop, and some inexpensive equipment because my gym is closed, so this connects to my door so I can work out. But of course, the biggest transformation is happening on digital. So many people and companies using digital platforms in ways they had never expected. All of my life now is being conducted through messaging apps, conference platforms online, speaking to my family, friends, and colleagues. We're speaking to some of the top business leaders and entrepreneurs in the world about how they're adapting to this challenge. It's all part of hashtag WFH, work from home, a special from my home to yours. Messaging apps have become a ubiquitous part of our lives, and even more so important in these days when people are trying to keep in touch since they can't physically see each other. But now a lot of companies are also migrating toward messaging apps like Viber in order to keep their teams in communication. So to discuss this growing phenomenon, we're joined by Anub Nayar, who is a senior director at Rakuten Viber. Anub, you're in Singapore. Before we get to the meat of this discussion, tell me a little bit about your setup during this pandemic and how you're working from home.
So it's interesting times. Given that social distancing is an absolute must, we found our ways to sort of work from home. At the end of it, we are also a communication platform, so it sort of marries in fairly well with what we do. And that's sort of also a part of our core responsibility to ensure that we are offering a service that works for all people across the world. I would say the initial bit was a bit challenging, but I think we're adjusting well to this.
I think a lot of us can relate to that famous professor in South Korea where the kids and the wife just barged in. I think some of us feel that on a daily basis. I think a lot of people might think that a digital platform like Viber was just ready to go. And of course, people have been using this app for years, but I'm sure changes actually had to be made. And I think a lot of people don't realize how much digital companies had to adapt so quickly. So what were some of the first things that changed, not just in the company, in Viber, but on your actual platform?
The moment we realized that this pandemic is truly becoming global, our first responsibility, given that so many people use us, is to ensure that we can provide a platform where there is authentic and trustworthy information. We realized that's our first priority. So many people open the app, open Viber across the world, specifically in the Philippines, so often. So can we provide them access to information that they can rely on, anything and everything that is related to COVID-19, whether they're looking at what precautions to take, what helplines to address. So can we identify a partner or identify an authoritative I would say, source of information. And that's what we did when we partnered with the Department of Health. I think the second aspect, which is very, very important, is to ensure that you provide a reliable experience that always works. You do not have any downtimes. You ensure that your service is running always, because you never know who may be needing it at a very, very important and vital time. And what we've also done is looked at our core product itself in terms of enabling certain services to be launched fairly quickly within this time to ensure that people can come together in terms of communication. So there's some work that we've done around group calls. We used to have group calls for only 5 members. We realized that sometimes it needs a larger audience. So we've increased it up to 20 members within this entire space, and similar initiatives like that.
I think it's incredibly important what you bring up about getting that reliable information up at the top of the screen. I noticed right away, in my case here in London, I was seeing information from the WHO at the top of the Viber screen. And of course, so many social media and digital platforms have been criticized for allowing any types of stories to go. So I think that when digital companies like Viber make that important decision that this top space is dedicated to reliable information, it really makes a sea change in how information is spread, because at the beginning of your day, first thing you see at the top of your Viber screen is that information. But when you talk about all these challenges and all these changes that you had to make so quickly, on the one hand, Viber's having to make sure that their employees are okay. On the other hand, having to make really significant changes to the platform. When you talk about changing what messages come first, that might sound easy, but did your engineers have to go into overdrive? How did they start working all of a sudden, all from different spaces? Tell us about that challenge and how you rose to the occasion.
Viber did take certain decisive steps, and even Rakuten Viber did take decisive steps in ensuring that employee safety comes first. And the moment this even started gaining some proportion, in fact, in most countries, even before it was supposed to be legally, sort of enforced by the government in terms of work from home, our company actually advised all employees with no exception to start working from home before anything was enforced by the government.
Companies moving faster than governments. It was a real phenomenon that we saw in leadership across the world. Anoop, we're going to go to a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to be discussing more about how the consumer experience is changing. And I want to hear more about exactly the huge growth in numbers that so many digital platforms have seen and how that's impacted the Viber platform. We'll be right back with more of #WFH Work From Home, a CNN Philippines special from my home to yours. Welcome back to the program. I'm Samuel Burke. This is a CNN Philippines special, #WFH Work From Home. We're talking to top entrepreneurs and business leaders on how they're adapting to the coronavirus challenge and really pivoting their businesses. We're joined again by Anoop Nayar. He is the Senior Director for Rakuten Viber. Viber has seen a huge increase during this crisis as we look for different ways to communicate with each other, even in the work setting. So Anoop, I'm just curious, can you tell us some data about how you see the Viber platform shifting, how consumers are using it in different ways, and if it's put any major pressure on your systems as people can't speak to each other in person, so communication apps like Viber have really become a lifeline for people?
Well, a lot of interesting things have started happening. So I think the first is we've seen group usage to grow up tremendously. So whether it's people forming groups and using Viber, group messaging specifically, or whether it's group audio calls, there's been a tremendous uptake in these two areas. What we've seen specifically, if I look at the Philippines, our overall usage actually doubled during this time. So that came as a real surprise, because yes, we always expected a surge, but it was very interesting that we saw such a tremendous increase.
I'm curious to know why you think that Filipinos have gravitated toward Viber even more so in this crisis. Of course, you're in the messaging app space. It's incredibly competitive, but certain regions gravitate towards certain apps more. Why more so for Viber in this region?
There are a couple of things that we've seen with Filipinos. The amount of time spent on a mobile device in the Philippines is the highest in the world. I believe it's one of the youngest populations also in the world, specifically in Asia. They love sort of expressing themselves, and we've always ensured that we offer enough services within our product which can help people express themselves. It's not only about just offering localized stickers, but it can also be about content. It can also be about things which are very, very relatable. We spend a lot of time and effort ensuring that our product and our services are very localized and catering to the needs of the average Filipino out there. So we've got that appreciation from our people, and that's something which we will continue doing for all our users.
Anoop Nayar, Senior Director for Rakuten Viber. Thank you very much for joining us and keeping us connected at this time when connectivity online is really the only option for so many of us.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Well, from messaging apps keeping us working at home to fitness platforms keeping us working out at home, it is all part of this digital experience that we're all trying to seek balance in as we are constantly indoors.
What's up, guys? It's Kenta here with Aptiv, and welcome to your workout.
Aptiv is an audio-only training app which big companies like Amazon have invested in. You can't see the trainer, but you can hear the trainer. Kenta Seki is one of the most popular trainers on the app, and he's here to tell us how Aptiv and trainers like him have been adapting to the crisis. Well, Kenta, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Samuel. I appreciate it.
So when people hear an audio-only workout app, of course, the first thing that they say to me, like they say to you, is how can you do a workout if you can't see somebody, see the trainer? But why would audio actually be beneficial instead of video for people working out at home, for instance?
I think people are used to doing one way, right, which has been video for the past 20, 30, 40 years. But if you look at different ways to change things up, audio is becoming one of the number one ways to receive all types of media. So why not in fitness, right? It's just kind of crossing over. It takes less storage space. It's a totally different experience. You know, you're not fixed to a screen. So you can actually just focus on whatever it is that you're doing and just listen to your trainer in your ear.
So I'm very curious how companies like Aptiv have been adapting to this new situation.
We're really fortunate to have the digital fitness era really thriving at the moment. Aptiv has been amazing with being able to send equipment to each of their trainers. I actually have one with me right now if you want me to pull it on.
Let's see it.
So this is kind of like a little basic setup of just a basic recording, booth that you would have at home.
And I guess that's just an investment that companies have to make, sending out that big equipment, maybe expensive equipment to keep people working. Well, Kenta, I'll just give you a moment to step back because I want to see some of your most recommended exercises for at home. I'm curious, what are some of the top at-home exercises that you recommend while people are stuck at home?
Absolutely. So that's the best part about fitness is you can actually do so much with just your body weight. So you'd stand with your feet hip distance apart. We would squat all the way down and jump straight up. Jumping up and down is just a great way to really work your legs. I'm going to do it from the side so you can see. You want to be pushing your hips straight back and then jumping up nice and high at the top. So even just doing a few reps of these can be a great way to keep you active and keep your body moving.
Yeah, I feel my heart rate. Just after a few of those, I feel it already.
Second exercise, as you mentioned, would be the basic push-up. Most people try to do them on their toes first, but I always recommend first starting on your knees. So make sure you bring your hands back so that your hands line up with your chest as you press. And then if you can do them perfectly here, raise up to those toes, and we would do the push-ups from there. So it's important that we open that back up just to really help with your posture and movement.
Well, Kenta Seki, thank you for keeping us moving during the lockdown. We will be listening to you on Aptiv and watching you on social media.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, my heart rate is already up just from those few exercises. Thank you to Aptiv as well as the teams at Viber. We will continue speaking to more business entrepreneurs and leaders who are rising to the occasion and adapting to this quickly changing situation with more #WFH, work from home, a CNN Philippines special from my home to yours.